Hello and welcome, Exiles, to a look at a Merc bot I decided to make in a fresh SSF run to get a little bit of relaxation after the trauma that was Gauntlet. I'm thinking 370. Oh, 200. Okay, actually I have to click that. Ah! What? What is that? It got worse. Now, I chose to do this as an Inquisitor, and why did I do that? Because it might seem rather unintuitive. It's actually because of Righteous Providence. This crit scaling I can actually apply to my Mercenary. The fun skill known as Destructive Link, which says it takes your main hand crit chance and it makes the crit chance of the main hand of the thing you're linked to equal to yours. What that actually means is it's caring about your default attack crit chance. It's not just caring about the fact my weapon has 12.8 base crit. It cares about the fact I have 500 plus strength and int, and my Inquisitor Ascendancy is giving me 500% crit chance and whatever other crit scaling I have, and it takes this 90% crit chance and it applies that to the link target's main hand. So the idea here is if we play Inquisitor, I can get all this crit scaling, which helps me out with like life scaling, ES scaling, defensive stats for myself, but also gives crit to my Mercenary. So that's the number one reason I chose Inquisitor. I wanted to build around this Destructive Link crit scaling. The other reason is Inquisitor also has very large sustain through Sanctuary and Pious Path. It gives you that hybrid life ES scaling. I've played a lot of ES builds this league, and I'd rather play a cool hybrid setup. If you mix this together with Warcry scaling with Enduring Cry, it actually can end up being a ton of sustain, and I think this will be a very feels good package later on as I progress the character. Right now, as it stands, our character, obviously, this isn't a min-maxed Warcry. This is a 10 min power. You know, we have 1400 life, 1400 ES regen. That's a bunch of feels good sustain. So that's the thought process there. And then, of course, Augury of Penitence. This is a nice support node. Just makes nearby enemies take increased damage. It actually, all of its points do, in fact, work to support players. Another fun fact is, like, whenever I recall my Merc on top of me, they will appear on top of this consecrated ground. Also, when you're, like, shield charging around, every single time you get to a new point of your shield charge, the ground reappears. And the fun thing is, this conch ground says it lingers. And it also affects you and your allies. So the fun thing is, when I do an Enduring Cry, which applies a buff to myself and my Mercenary, which gives them a bunch of percent life regen and me a bunch of percent life regen, and then I'm shield charging around and they're warping on top of my character, they are getting conch ground that lingers on them for 4 seconds. So it actually makes my Merc have quite a bit of sustain, not only in life pool, but also on ES pool. So if I give them a little bit of ES gear, their sustain is very good. So that's the concept of why I chose Inquisitor. I don't know how it's going to work end game wise, but I got some ideas and I'm going to feel it out as I go. And that's the general concept. As for what Merc bots I have been trying, I'm still pretty early on. I'm only level 93. I just got my first 2 Void Stones, and I'm working towards doing Maven and Uber Elder. This is a SSF progression. And the thing I'm planning on going for late game is I actually want to use a Mercenary called the Bladebiter. See if I can pull up the Bladebiter real quick here and try to explain why I think it would be a fun character to use. The Bladebiter, the reason I specifically want to use the Bladebiter is because it has this skill right here, Profane Strike, which if you look closely, you'll notice the artwork is literally the artwork for Molten Strike. And as far as I can tell, it literally is Molten Strike, but it's purple looking, aka I think it looks cool. And so what I would like to do is build around a Mercenary where I give them additional strikes and they're clearing with purple Molten Strike just for fun of it. But the thing is, obviously, when you're playing a Merc mob build, you kind of have to roll with whatever good Mercs you get and make it work as you go. Right now, the best Merc I've found so far has been the Kineticist in terms of clear, and the Smolder Strike in terms of single target using this Molten Strike. I'm still looking for my Bladebiter with a Molten Strike setup, and we'll see how that goes. I have some plans for it, but I'll probably detail that in a future video when I actually get it set up. As for right now, we are using a Kineticist. And one of the fun parts of destructive play is if you are just completely overriding their crit chance with your crit chance, using something like a Marlene's Fallacy is actually kind of insane. because that 40% less crit chance doesn't even matter. We are overwriting their crit chance with our 90% crit chance. As my character gets better and better, you know, better gear on it, better strength, better int, I will be giving them crit cap entirely. So that's one of the things we're working towards. And obviously right now we don't have a good divine. We haven't farmed crit catalyst. This will become a better and better amulet. So that's part of the other reason we were doing destructive play with a mercenary, is you can use this quite easily. Other things we're forcing on the mercenary early game is any forms of accuracy or percent damage. Really early on, we try to push as much of that stuff as we can. Ultimately, late game, you can start getting some good percent damage scalings through certain unique items. For something like a Kineticist, you can get things like a Wrath Pith. Some people can do armor stackers late game. There's a lot of other options that give you percent damage, but early game, when you're just trying to make it work, getting percent damage wherever you can is nice. And then, of course, attack speed. I forced on items like Devotos for attack speed, Worm Scale Gauntlets with attack speed. If I could, I got attack speed on rings, stuff like that. You get the idea. Of course, trying to go for a decent attack speed weapon has been a part of our thought process, and that's just currently what we're working through. Now, one other thing I want to take note of, which I think is very, very cool about mercenaries, is you'll notice I have a mod on here that says, "Wow, Pinnacle Atlas boss is in your presence." From what I've been able to tell and what people have told me is the While Nearby Unique and While Nearby Pinnacle boss, both of those are ticked as active when the Merc is next to the player character. So this is actually permanently active while I'm playing with this mercenary. And late game, we're going to abuse that for things like aura effect scaling and additional strikes and things like that. Here's an example where I haven't found a Kineticist with haste yet, but if I put this chest piece on a Kineticist with haste, it would be giving them 50% aura effect to the haste. And for example, right now, I am personally running haste. If I get a haste Kineticist, then I can swap into something like Flesh and Stone plus Tempest Shield and get my character to be way tankier. So stuff like that is things I am looking for. So that is the general concept of the character. Now I want to talk about a bit of progression and how I started this run. I've done this run on SSF, and there are basically, I've streamed it all live pretty much. So I will link to the first VOD below. Honestly, you can just go to the live tab of the YouTube if you're curious to see my progression and what it looked like at various points. But I went ahead and set up a few trees to showcase my progression. I decided to start out with Righteous Fire just to get my character started, just because I like Righteous Fire. And I played like that until I could get to level 38. Now, the important thing I did at level 38 is I got Eternal Blessing and I got Flame Link. Flame Link doesn't exist for us until level 34, and Eternal Blessing is level 38, both of which are in Act 4, and I think those are pretty key pieces to start the Merc bot for a few reasons. Reason number one is Mercs have very bad ailment mitigation, so solving their ailments through something like Purity of Elements early game is a great option. Late game, I'd like to get them ailment mitigation through their actual items, so that way I can drop Purity of Elements because it's not strong outside of the ailment mitigation. But early game, it's a way you solve them getting frozen and shocked and stuff like that, which are things that get them killed often. Now, the reason number two, besides the Eternal Blessing, is the Flame Link. Early on, you might not have some good gear for your mercenary to use. And so if you just have a bunch of life on your tree and a bunch of life on your gear and you Flame Link them, you'll give them a decent amount of flat, which helps make up for them having a bad weapon. So I started it all the way, basically as soon as I could at level 38. And I gotta be honest, it worked pretty decently. It was a bit slow on DPS for going through the campaign, but all in all, for having a completely automized, basically attack drone, it felt pretty good in terms of the campaign. I felt like a pretty relaxing playthrough. Ultimately, your damage is heavily tied to the mercenary you get and the supports they come with. Initially, at level 34, I think the 38 swap I did, I got a level 34 many shot in Dried Lake, so I farmed a bit until I found an okay Merc. And that many shot had a couple LMP supports with Icicle Rain and Ice Shot, and it carried me all the way, I believe, to Act 6 or 7, when I then found a combatant with some okay skills. And it's pretty much you just swap in and out different mercenaries that have some okay set of skills and see how they perform against various bosses. The important thing here is you want to make sure you don't soft lock your character by spending too much gold and spending them on mercs that are going to die, so be a little bit careful about that. One thing I want to take note of when playing these mercenaries is The items don't need to be particularly good in terms of their gear, but the most important thing I found, and I might have already vendored my old gear, but the most important thing I found when doing these mercenaries is make sure you give them percent damage, flat damage wherever you can. So like if gloves have flat damage, accuracy, attack speed, percent elemental damage on rings, percent elemental damage on amulet, percent elemental damage with attacks on belt, stuff like that is where you really make a pretty solid difference, I think, in their initial damage dealing. So you want to try to force in those stats wherever you can to help your mercenaries damage early game. And then after that, it's really just about, can you find a decent mercenary? The Kineticist, really, you need to have KB, greater KB with kinetic blast of clustering. Otherwise, they'll spam too much of the wrong skill. So that sort of combination works. If you have a Molten Strike guy, you need to make sure he doesn't have Leap Slam. A lot of times, movement skills are kind of bricks to the AI from Mercs, from what I can tell from playing, is it'll cause them to do movement skills when they should just be attacking the enemy. So that's a very big important find, is if you find a Merc that has a movement skill, like mine has Flame Dash, that isn't very ideal. If they don't have that movement skill, they're more likely to constantly attack. Another thing I noticed, a little fun thing I noticed, is once I got Windscreen, which allowed me to add in Sniper's Mark for myself, and the Kineticist would do Elemental Weakness, when I marked the enemies, I don't know if this is tinfoil hat theory or it actually worked differently, but it felt like my Merc did better at just being like, oh, that guy's marked, or that guy's marked, I am going to attack this guy. So like, to some extent, you're battling the AI a little bit, I feel like, in terms of their ability to know, oh, I'm just supposed to keep attacking. Because sometimes you'll find scenarios where your Merc's just kind of like walking around, even though there's one enemy right there, and you're like, just shoot the enemy, right? So once I added in Sniper's Mark, that felt like it helped the targeting or the intelligence of the mercenary to be like, oh, we need to attack this enemy. That was one thing I noticed as well. So yeah, that's some of the general concepts. I'm just making this video because there's a lot of people that are asking for an update in terms of how are you building your character, what's the concept, stuff like that. And hopefully you guys like this video. I'll go ahead and showcase now. I'm working towards a next memory thread and just show you guys what it looks like gameplay wise. It's pretty much just link your character, shield charge around. If you see a tanky enemy, throw down Pyroclast to sabotage. Throughout the campaign, I play with regular Pyroclast, and then at Mercenary Lab, I decided to farm more specifically the Pyroclast to sabotage. Late game, I want to get out of this. I want to try to do an Energy Blade Rallying Cry setup, but we'll see how that goes. I'll update you. And then, of course, the trees here are just showcasing the early progression. Mainly just, you're starting out with a bunch of life scaling, and then eventually once you get to Merc Lab, where you have both Pious Path and Righteous Providence, then you swap to a hybrid setup. And I should have Mind Over Matter on here because you're doing EB and Mind Over Matter. The idea is the EB will help sustain all your costs of your link skills and your minds and stuff. And the Mind Over Matter will make it so that the damage that goes to you, your ES is still used as an effective defensive layer, because we have both 6k life and about 2k energy shield. So let's go ahead and showcase what this character looks like in some more standard mapping. And it's pretty much just literally, you link them and go. Certain Mercs are just better clear speed than others. Kineticist seems by far and away one of the better Mercs for clear speed. I think a lot of the strike Mercs could be much better for clear speed as well, but they need additional strike gloves. So I'm trying to find some of those with Hillock right now is what I'm trying to farm in research. But so far that has not worked well because he's only given me like chest piece to use grand currency on. So I'm hoping that works eventually for finding an appropriate pair of additional strike gloves. Although eventually we might just end up farming XR to get there. Where is the boss fight? This boss is always hard to find. Oh, here he is. Hello, boss. We'll snipers mark him, throw some Pyroclast mines, and then hopefully our Merc will actually attack him. You can see like sometimes there's an issue where it's like if there's extra enemies around, the Merc will just shoot at random things. So you kind of fight the intelligence of your mercenary every now and then, where in terms of like they'll just attack other things. But all in all, as I progress this character, it's gotten more and more fun to play. And this is just a fresh character all the way up into 94 so far. And I'll probably make some more update videos as we do various changes to the build. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. As always, thanks for watching, Exiles. Take care and peace out. Have a good one.